And then we have leads generated and then the conversion rate of those leads. So here, for example, we have 135 leads that were generated and 22% of was the conversion rate. We are going to now dive into the people side of your data order of operations. This is where people often spend a ton of time that can be really nipped in the bud early on if you plan accordingly. So if you have not watched part 1 yet about planning out your content structure, go back there, I'll wait, and I'll come back here and watch this. Hi, my name is JJ Reynolds, and I'm the founder at Vision Labs. We help teams large and small maximize their utilization of their marketing data. From data collection all the way through visualization and forecasting, we manage it all. From companies ranging from $1 million to $300 million plus we work with. Now let's get into it. So there are 3 core levels of reporting. There is a director, a manager, and practitioner. In general, think of practitioners are the ones who push the buttons, managers are the ones who push multiple people to push those buttons, and directors are who are responsible for the outcomes. If you can think about those 3 things, it helps you strategize what we need for people to be making actionable decisions on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. So, what does a director need? Usually they have a roll-up report that might be weekly. That is the kind of core principle and example we want to use. So we have a weekly report that might show you the top line, so number of sessions or views or hits, depending on what they are. We'll talk about the different departments shortly. Then you have managers who will be daily, right? So that's going to be where you have a report that might have notifications if something's below a target threshold. And then you have practitioners who are oftentimes in the platforms pushing the buttons. That is where you're running ads, you're doing content, you're running LinkedIn, etc. So those are the 3 different types of levels. The practitioner is going to be the hardest one to get into a third-party reporting tool. In general, they are oftentimes in the actual source and they are honed in to that individual source of data. Let's just take, for example, meta ads. If you are making meta ads decisions, you are oftentimes inside of the meta ads platform making those decisions, and you don't need a third-party reporting platform. Or if you don't need it, you don't want to use it because you go directly to the source. Director, manager, practitioner. Now let's take into account different departments, right? So you might have an SEO function. You might have an organic growth function that might have its own director, manager, and practitioner level. They are doing one thing. So how do you know what those end reporting is going to look like? Are they responsible for driving sales enablement content? Are they responsible for driving organic growth as far as sessions go? What type of sessions? What type of content? Is that content responsible for direct KPIs? For example, leads, booked demos, creating an account? Or do you have something that's more like sales enablement, where it's this content is a function for a different department to utilize, right? So think about that for an example, and how do we want to measure that? Because if we took into account our goals and our outcomes on our websites. This is a quick interruption to tell you about our friend and sponsor, Analytics Canvas. If you are serious about pulling insights from BigQuery, GA4, and maintaining them without maintaining a team of analysts, Analytics Canvas might be the tool for you. You can use their drag and drop builder to build out really complex queries, maintain them, and then write them to any destination you choose. This could be writing directly to Looker Studio to visualize, Google Sheets, Excel, Tableau. They maintain this and automate whatever you build on their platform. So you do not have to go back and update packages or change things. They manage that for you. At Vision Labs, we actually use Analytics Canvas to maintain all of our GA4 pipelines for our enterprise clients. So why wait? Head over to analyticscanvas.com, start a free trial, and tell them Vision Labs sent you to get a little extra quota and build your better tomorrow. Now back to your video. We now can layer in this department level reporting. The same thing goes when you talk about paid media, right? So paid media might be driving to a direct book a demo or start a trial or download the PDF page. That might be the same page that your organic growth team is also driving content to from the social channels or from those channels. Do you have reporting that is based off of your 3 levels, right? Director, manager, and practitioner? Or do you have it based off of the actual function? We've worked with companies on both sides of those things because sometimes you really want to know the outcome of the content or the outcome of the paid media or the outcome of the page. So now we have started to layer in a framework, right? We have director, manager, practitioner, and we have departments. Maybe let's just say organic, and we have paid. So now that we have that distinction, all right, the end goals is these kind of 3 levels of reports. It could be the same report, but just dynamic. We now have to take a look at every single piece of content on the site. So that is, for example, pages. I'm going to say page as a whole. This could be a blog page. This could be a lead page, a sales page, any type of page. And we have to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of this page, right? And which department is ultimately responsible for that? Do you have a single page that is saying, hey, this is the lead page for our booking a call. The outcome of this page needs to be something very tangible. Did people book calls? And we might judge that page and say, hey, how many people saw this page? How many people booked a call? That is the conversion rate of that page. And then we layer in the session. So we say, hey, this page is converting at 20% for organic traffic, right? People that started on a blog page from maybe or Google organic or YouTube organic or something like that, then viewed that page and then ultimately converted into the outcome. The same thing we have to also consider for the paid side of things. So your managers and directors and practitioners are all going to be looking at your reporting and saying, is this serving me? What decision do I need to make? And oftentimes you need to have a 2-metric tango. That is what we call it here at Vision Lab, a 2-metric tango, where you have one metric, say for conversion rate, and then you have outcomes. So you could say, hey, our conversion rate is 20% and we drove 10 leads. Is that good or bad? You have to look at both. Maybe your goal was 1,000 leads, right, for that department, and you now have a 10% conversion rate. Or maybe you have a 1% conversion rate and your goal is 1,000 leads. It doesn't make a difference. But you need to have 2 metrics at every step of your reporting to know, is the outcome what we are trying to achieve? Now I'm going to show you our Vision Labs demo data. This is from our website. It is our data that we utilize. And I want to show you how that director, manager, and practitioner can coincide in the same style of reporting. This is, again, an agency site that is mostly lead generation, but I'll show you how that looks. So here we have an overview page that has a date and then it has a vertical that is tied to it. So maybe you, for example, have different types of sites. For example, Intuit is a very common enterprise site. They have MailChimp and they also have QuickBooks and they have a bunch of other pieces of information. Maybe you want to drill into that and you want to have a more dynamic reporting for your directors. Here we have an idea behind the 2-metric tango and how that looks. So here we have sessions, right? We might drive more sessions or less sessions. And we then have lead impressions, the number of people who saw any type of lead magnet. So those two are bundled together. And then we have leads generated and then the conversion rate of those leads. So here, for example, we have 135 leads that were generated and 22% of was the conversion rate. So now we can look at these 4 metrics and they are bundled together in our 2-metric tangos. We can then dive down into every individual function. You might have another category above this. This is very executional. Maybe you have 10 PDFs and 10 webinars. You might want to have a separate one that's just webinars and then you have PDFs, right? And then you drill down into that to say, hey, here are the actual PDFs and the actual webinars, and you can dive into that. We use something called the Foresight system to categorize those in a way that makes sense to enterprise sites. A quick interruption to let you know about our due audit. Yes, the data order of operations audit. Go to visionlabs.com/DOO. Fill out an application and we will run through every single step of the data order of operations, from conversion tracking through to forecasting and everything in between, to make sure your organization is where it needs to be and you have a clear path to get there if you are not currently there. We both run through strategic and technical with your team. It is one of the most amazing things out there, and teams walk away with a strategic roadmap and a plan to get there. So here are all the different lead names that we have, right? So these are all different types of intent, and you can see that by the conversion rate, right? A contact form is much different than a free PDF download, right? Very different conversion rates, different behaviors, etc. And that's why I want to group those. When you have a larger site with a lot of different information, you want to group those all together. This is now we're starting looking at the manager level role, and maybe we want to drive into more nuance and say, hey, how is the image metric grid converting? Are we losing people above the fold? Are we losing people below the fold? Where are we losing people in that? And we can see that right here. So maybe we need to go and adjust something along those lines and say, hey, practitioners, we need to increase the conversion rate of this page. It's now very tangible to go do that. We can then look at the exact same thing of how well is Google or LinkedIn or ActiveCampaign, YouTube driving those sessions, and then ultimately driving the impressions, leads generated, and then conversion rate. Again, 2-metric Tango, we have 2 different groups of 2-metric tangos. So if you have a person who is responsible for executing again and again and again, you know that, hey, you're supposed to drive more sessions and more lead impressions. If you're not driving sessions without lead impressions, well, then we're not going off to the races. And if you're not driving leads without a high enough conversion rate, well, we are also broken there. It kind of creates a check and balance for a team to know that there's 2 metrics that should be utilized together. We now have these types of reports where we have where they came from, what they're doing. Well, now we can actually dive in and say, hey, Google, how is Google doing as a whole? And you can see Google is actually a much better conversion rate than, for example, everything as a whole, right? And this is where if you have different teams, you might want to have different reports where this is our organic growth and it's the exact same idea. And maybe you have trends and patterns and everything else for that individual team. Whereas we are a smaller team and we can put everything together and have it more clickable, right? Because sometimes a LinkedIn person might not even care about Google Organic. It doesn't matter from that manager level position, but the director might, right? And so here's everything at a whole level. And so when you're starting to build out an architecture report strategy, ask yourself, what breakdowns do we need to create division and unity? I know division and unity sounds crazy, but you have to have things divided and siloed so you can execute again and again, but you also have to have it be able to roll up together without duplicating things, without making more things complicated. And that's where you can really dive in. And so you can say, hey, these traffic sources, these outcomes are what are driving the biggest outcomes. And now we are starting to roll up the entire team and organization into a singular reporting structure. That can then look like this for an individual department, right? So you can say, hey, how are we doing this week? And is that within the goal? So here we can see our goal line right there, and we can see the target of what we're trying to shoot for. And did we achieve that target? And say, hey, we boosted conversion rate this week. Awesome. Was the volume also there? Again, 2-metric Tango here. We are trying to get the entire organization on the same page. And then you can drill down here and say, okay, which ones are driving that volume and which ones are driving the actual conversion rates that we're hoping for? And now you can make a better decision without having to have an entire organizational meeting about why is our reporting not reflecting what we're trying to do. This creates a strategy for you to say, hey, director, manager, practitioner, what are we trying to achieve, right? And then you can have reporting that makes more sense for those teams. One last thing on this, when you're starting to strategize out your different types of pages, is how do you want to communicate what the intention of a page is? I talked about this a little bit in the last video, but I want to run through this one more time so you really know, is this what we're trying to do? What you can do is use folders to then identify, hey, this is a lead page, this is a page that is intended for this specific outcome, right? LP equals lead page. Now we know how many people saw lead pages, how many people converted on those lead pages, and now we can drive those leads. When you and your team are trying to make these folder decisions, you might be stuck, right? You might not be able to change your entire reporting structure based off of this. You can use the data layer to do so. So if you get really stuck and you're trying to get buy-in from across the team, just ask yourself, what information do we need to know about this page to know what the person who authored it was trying to achieve? That is how you can end up with reporting like this, where you know across the organization, are we doing what we were trying to do? Yes or no? Did we achieve that as a department, as an organization? Each different type of department and function is going to have a different level of scrutiny for what you're trying to achieve.